How some phrases just stick with us, become part of how we all think almost without us realizing it.
Hmm.
Or how, a single word in a headline can completely change how we feel about an issue.
Absolutely.
It's way more than just linguistics, isn't it? It feels like it's really about power, context, the whole social reality.
Exactly. It's fundamental.
So today we're doing a deep dive into this fascinating world where language isn't just a neutral tool for, say, describing things as they are.
Right.
Instead, it's a powerful social practice. It actively shapes what can be, reflecting and even forging our power relations, our ideologies, maybe even who we think we are.
Precisely. And for this deep dive, we've really synthesized a lot of material. We're talking comprehensive briefing docs, detailed study guides, even some really insightful Q&A sessions.
Okay.
And it all focuses on discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis, and what they mean for, well, everything from language education to just understanding social dynamics.
So what's the mission here for our listeners?
Our mission today is basically to give you a shortcut, a way to get really well informed about this fast. We want to help you understand language beyond the sentence.
Language beyond the sentence. I like that.
Yeah. The goal is so you can start spotting those hidden meanings, maybe challenge some assumptions, your own or others, and just engage with the world much more critically, more empowered, really.
Okay, great. Let's unpack this then. We need some foundational ideas first, right?
Mhm.
Because, we often think of language as just words, vocabulary, grammar.
The basics.
But the material we've looked at paints a much, much bigger picture. It starts with this concept of discourse. It sounds like it's, well, you said it, beyond the sentence, like seeing the whole forest, not just the trees.
That's a perfect analogy. Discourse isn't just about individual words or sentences, you're right. It's this overarching concept. It refers to language in use beyond that sentence level.
Okay.
So think about whole social interactions, the specific context they happen in, and crucially, the power relations woven through them.
Power relations.
Right.
Okay.
And this includes everything, a casual chat, a formal policy document, a news report, even visual stuff like ads. They're all shaped by cultural and social norms.
Right.
And what's really fascinating here, as you touched on, is that discourse isn't just describing reality. It's actively reflecting and shaping our social identities, our relationships, the very ideologies we hold. It's alive, a living system.
Wow. Okay, so if discourse is this huge dynamic ecosystem,
Mm.
where do things like text and talk fit in? Are they just smaller parts or different things?
They're key components, definitely, but they are distinct. Think of text as,
Yeah.
well, any coherent instance of language written or spoken is the actual stuff, the linguistic material you can point to and analyze.
Like this transcript will be.
Exactly, like an article, a book, or, yeah, a transcript tends to be a bit more fixed. Talk, on the other hand, is specifically the spoken interaction between people, real time.
Oh.
It's incredibly dynamic, totally context-dependent, full of things like turn-taking, intonation, body language, immediate feedback, all that stuff.
Right, the messy bits of conversation.
Kind of. And the relationship is symbiotic, really. Talk often produces text. Like you said, this conversation, this talk will become a text.
Got it.
And both text and talk are instances, examples of discourse.
Yeah.
They represent language doing its work in a social context.
Okay, that clarifies things. And our sources also mention something called texture, which sounds interesting. It's what makes, say, a paragraph or a conversation feel right, unified. Not just like a random jumble of sentences, like the difference between a pile of bricks and a well-built wall. Is that a fair comparison?
That's a great comparison,
Yeah.
yes. Texture is that essential property. And it's mainly created by the interplay of two key things, cohesion and coherence.
Cohesion and coherence. Okay.
So cohesion refers to the explicit linguistic links, the surface connections you can actually see or hear in the text,
like
conjunctions and putso, pronouns he, she, it, they, or repeating key words or phrases. They're the structural links, the sort of nuts and bolts holding the sentences together.
the visible glue, kind of?
Exactly. The visible glue.
So if cohesion is the visible glue, coherence feels different. It's more about the overall meaning, the logical flow, right?
Yeah.
Making sense.
Absolutely. You've hit it.
Yeah.
While cohesion is about those surface links, coherence is the deeper thing. It's the overall logical sense, the flow that makes a text truly understandable as a whole.
Okay.
And it relies really heavily on our background knowledge, shared cultural understanding, and the specific context to interpret meaning.
So you need more than just the words.
Yeah, definitely. You could have a text that's perfectly cohesive sentences linked with and then, But if it jumps randomly between topics, it lacks coherence. It doesn't make sense.
Right, like some surrealist poetry, maybe.
Or yeah, or like reading a technical manual without any background. The sentences might link, but the overall meaning is lost. Our sources give the example of a doctor's chart cohesive to another doctor, maybe, but incoherent to a patient without that shared context.
That's a great example.
Yeah. And what's really key is that it's the interaction of cohesion and coherence, plus the interpreter's own knowledge and context that actually creates meaning.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, and I think this is a massive takeaway for anyone listening. Our sources are really clear. Meaning isn't just sort of locked inside the words of a text waiting to be found.
No, it's much more active than that. What's genuinely transformative here is realizing that meaning emerges. It comes out of this complex interaction between the text itself, its context, and the interpreter that's you, the reader or listener.
Right. Me, right now, interpreting what you're saying.
Exactly. And the context, the social, cultural, historical setting where the language happens, profoundly shapes how we interpret it.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about the simple word fire. If you hear someone shout fire in a crowded cinema.
Panic! Get out!
Right. Urgent, a warning. But if you see the word fire, maybe in an ad for a cozy log cabin retreat.
Oh, totally different. Warmth, comfort, relaxation.
Exactly. The word itself didn't change, but the context completely shifted the meaning, the feeling, our likely response.
Bro. Yeah.
And our sources really hammer this home. Understanding this context deeply is what stops us from misinterpreting things. It allows for a much deeper analysis of what a text is actually doing socially.
So it's not just what it says, but what it does.
Precisely. And understanding these basics, discourse, text, talk, texture, context, helps you go beyond just the literal words. It lets you critically interpret everything from a news headline to a casual chat, asking, okay, what's really being communicated here and why?
Okay, so with that foundation laid, understanding how language fundamentally works, it feels like the right time to put on our critical thinking hats. Let's look at what happens when power enters the equation more explicitly. This brings us to critical discourse analysis, or CDA. Our sources frame it as a powerful interdisciplinary approach, like having a special linguistic magnifying glass.
That's a fantastic way to think about it. CDA isn't just some abstract academic theory, it's a critical toolkit. Its main focus is to meticulously examine how language connects to power, to ideology, and to social inequality.
Okay, so it's looking for trouble, in a way.
Well, it's looking for issues. It's inherently issue-oriented because it actively investigates real-world social problems. Think about systemic discrimination, political manipulation, gender inequality, but it does so through the lens of language. How language is used to create, maintain, or sometimes challenge these problems.
Right.
And it draws on insights from linguistics, sure, but also sociology, education, political science.
Yeah.
It brings them together to uncover the subtle ways language reflects and perpetuates these big issues.
So it's really about connecting the dots, isn't it, between the everyday language patterns we see or use and these much bigger societal structures and problems playing out.
Exactly that.
Okay.
Connecting the micro-level language choices to the macro-level social context.
Yeah.
And CDA operates on several core principles. First, and maybe the most central, is power and dominance. The idea here is that language isn't neutral. It inherently reflects and often reinforces hierarchical structures and authority. You know, how leaders talk, how laws are written, even how we address each other. It all plays a role in who has power and how it's maintained.
Makes sense.
Second, ideology. Discourse is a primary way we communicate specific beliefs and value systems. And crucially, it can naturalize certain social practices, making them seem normal, inevitable, just the way things are.
Even if they're not fair.
Even if they systematically disadvantage certain groups. An ideology is basically a system of ideas shaping our worldview, and language is its main vehicle. It expresses and reinforces these views, often without us even noticing. We just absorb it as common sense.
Wow. Okay, what else?
Third, context sensitivity. This goes back to what we discussed earlier. CDA insists that any analysis must consider the historical, cultural, institutional factors around the language. You just can't understand the power dynamics without the context.
Right. Words don't exist in a vacuum.
Never. And finally, maybe the most foundational principle, language as social practice. This means language doesn't just describe social reality, it actively constructs it. It both reflects the structures that exist and has the power to change them.
That's a powerful idea. Language builds worlds.
In a very real sense, yes.
Now, to help us get a practical handle on this, our sources point to a specific framework that's widely used, Fairclough's three-dimensional model. Sounds like a structured way to actually do this kind of analysis.
It is. Fairclough's model is incredibly useful because it gives you a practical, step-by-step way to approach a piece of discourse critically. It helps you peel back the layers. There are three dimensions, or layers.
Okay, layer one.
Layer one is the text. This is the most concrete bit, the actual written or spoken language itself. Here you'd analyze things like specific vocabulary choices, grammatical structures, metaphors, how cohesive it is.
Like, are they using passive voice to avoid blame? Or strong verbs to assign it?
Exactly that kind of thing. Are abstract nouns used to hide who's doing what? Are certain groups labeled in specific ways? That's the text level.
Okay, layer two.
Layer two is discursive practice. This looks beyond the words themselves to how the text is produced, distributed, and consumed within its social context. Who made this text? Who is it for? How is it getting out there? What are the usual conventions for this type of communication?
So, like, how a news article is produced and read is different from how a scientific paper is.
Precisely. The processes, the audiences, the expectations, they're all different, and they reflect different social conventions and power structures. That's discursive practice.
Got it. And the third layer.
The third and broadest layer is social practice. This zooms out to the biggest picture. It encompasses the wider societal, cultural, institutional, and power structures that both shape the discourse and are shaped by it.
So asking the really big questions.
Yeah. What social institutions are involved here? What political forces? What dominant ideologies are being reinforced or maybe challenged? How does this specific piece of discourse contribute to maintaining the status quo or perhaps disrupting it?
It's a really powerful way to see how, say, a single news report isn't just words on a page or screen. It's connected to this whole system: who owns the media outlet, what political climate it exists in, what cultural assumptions it relies on.
Exactly. It connects the dots from the micro to the macro.
But how does language specifically do that? How does it actually enact power? Can we really trace that influence directly?
We can, absolutely. Language is both a medium for power, it carries messages about power, and a means of exercising power directly.
Hmm.
Our sources highlight three key ways this happens. First, there's domination.
Domination sounds pretty direct.
It is. This refers to the more overt, explicit control or power exercised by one group over another. Think about government censorship laws or a police officer giving a direct command. The power imbalance and its linguistic expression are pretty clear.
Okay, that's obvious power. But you mentioned ideology earlier, making things seem normal. That sounds less direct.
Much less direct. And that brings us to the second concept, hegemony. This is where it gets really interesting and much more subtle.
Hegemony, how is that different from domination?
It's fundamentally different because it involves consent, often without people realizing it. Hegemony is this pervasive form of control where dominant ideologies, the beliefs and values of the powerful groups, become widely accepted by everyone else, including subordinate groups.
How does that happen?
Through discourse. These ideas are repeated, circulated, embedded in institutions like media and education until they appear as just common sense, natural, the only logical way to think, even if these ideas actually serve the interests of the dominant group.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about how economic policies are often framed. If tax cuts for corporations are consistently described in the media and by politicians as job creation incentives,
Right, you hear that all the time.
that framing can become hegemonic. It presents a specific economic theory, one that benefits certain groups, as a neutral, common-sense fact about how economies work. It makes it much harder to argue for alternatives because you're arguing against what seems obviously true.
So it's control through shaping belief, not through force. Wow, that's subtle.
Incredibly subtle and incredibly effective. It makes power structures seem legitimate and natural, which makes them very stable and hard to challenge. People don't feel oppressed. They feel like they're agreeing with common sense.
Okay, so we have direct domination and subtle hegemony through consent. What's the third way language enacts power?
The third way our sources highlight is manipulation. This is maybe somewhere between the two. It describes the deliberate, often covert ways language can be used to influence people's beliefs and behaviors to achieve a specific goal, often without the target being fully aware of the persuasive strategy.
So less about making an ideology seem natural and more about tricking someone.
Tricking might be a strong word sometimes, but it's definitely about strategic influence. Think about advertising. Carefully chosen words, emotional appeals, maybe selective use of statistics, all designed to persuade you to buy something, often bypassing rational thought.
Or political campaigns using loaded language or misleading narratives.
Exactly. Using fear, or hope or specific framing to sway voters, not necessarily through logical argument, but through emotional resonance or by subtly misrepresenting facts. That's manipulation, language being used strategically to shape outcomes covertly.
Can you give us some more maybe everyday examples? Where might we see CDA concepts like hegemony or manipulation playing out?
Oh, they're everywhere once you start looking.
Yeah.
Consider political speeches. Leaders constantly use rhetoric, framing metaphors, words like freedom, security, family values. These aren't just words. They carry huge ideological weight.
Right, security can be used to justify almost anything.
Precisely. Using security to frame increased surveillance can make it sound like a universal necessity, achieving a kind of hegemony over public opinion about privacy versus safety. Or think about workplace language. How might a manager frame job cuts?
As a restructuring for efficiency or streamlining operations?
Exactly. That's language working hard.
Mm-hmm.
It softens the blow, yes, but it also naturalizes a potentially painful decision, makes it seem purely rational and inevitable, and helps maintain the company's image. It's not just stating facts. It's managing meaning and power.
Even in classrooms, maybe.
Absolutely. Teacher talk can subtly reinforce hierarchies. Studies on gendered communication show how everyday language patterns construct and perpetuate social roles and inequalities. It's woven into the fabric of our interactions.
So understanding CDA really helps you critically evaluate, well, almost everything. Media, politics, even just chatting with your boss. You can see the subtle power dynamics.
It makes you a much more discerning consumer of information, definitely, and maybe a more conscious producer of it, too.
Okay, this can feel a bit heavy, though, almost disempowering. If language is so deeply tied to power and ideology, constantly shaping us, how do we even navigate it? Is there a way out?
That's a crucial question. And yes, absolutely. The focus shifts here from just diagnosing the problems to finding tools for empowerment. This is where concepts like critical language awareness, or CLA, come in.
Critical language awareness, CLA, what is that exactly?
It's not just knowing that language isn't neutral. It's actively understanding how it reflects and shapes social relations, ideologies, power dynamics. It's developing a conscious awareness of language's role in the social world.
And why is that so important?
It's crucial because it equips you, the language user, the learner, the citizen, with the skills to navigate these complex linguistic hierarchies we've been talking about.
Oh.
It helps you appreciate and respect linguistic diversity rather than just accepting dominant norms. And it enables you to engage thoughtfully, ethically, critically with everything from global media messages to academic texts.
So it's about fostering socially responsible communication.
Exactly. It's about being able to see the power plays, question the assumptions, and maybe even speak truth to power, or at least recognize when power is speaking untruths through language.
So it's like developing that superpower we mentioned, to see through the everyday language, look beneath the surface, maybe even challenge the status quo.
That's a great way to put it. It gives you a critical lens to both analyze and create language more consciously. And CLA is very closely linked to another important field, critical applied linguistics, or CA.
CLL, okay, how does that fit in?
CLA takes these critical principles and applies them directly to real-world language issues, particularly in social, political, and educational contexts. It actively addresses problems like linguistic inequality, why some languages get more prestige than others, how power works in language policy, the challenges and benefits of multilingualism, and the role ideology plays in shaping how languages are taught and used.
So it's the practical application in a sense. What are some concrete contributions of CLL? How might it affect, say, our own learning or teaching environments?
CAL has made several really vital contributions. Firstly, it encourages everyone involved in language learners, teachers, policymakers to critically reflect on dominant language ideologies. To ask why standard English, for example, is often privileged over other varieties or languages.
Challenging those assumptions.
Exactly. Secondly, it promotes inclusive and socially responsive curricula. So language education isn't just about grammar rules. It's about understanding language's social role, its history, its connection to identity and power.
Makes language learning much richer.
Definitely. Thirdly, CAL champions multilingual pedagogies. This means not just tolerating students' home languages in the classroom, but actively validating them, recognizing them as valuable resources for learning and identity rather than problems to be overcome.
That sounds hugely important for equity.
It is. And fourthly, CAL focuses on developing learners' critical literacy skills, the ability to analyze media, political texts, advertisements, you name it, for underlying biases, hidden agendas, and persuasive techniques.
So putting the critical lens into practice.
Right. So when you pull it all together, CAL fundamentally links language learning with social justice. It aims to foster learners who are not just proficient in a language, but are critical, empowered, and socially responsible users of it.
And part of this whole empowerment picture involves recognizing something really fundamental, something our sources call linguistic human rights. That sounds profound.
It is profound. Linguistic human rights, or LHR, are about the basic rights of individuals and communities to use their own languages freely in all aspects of life.
Mm.
This includes the right to education in their languages, the right to access public services, legal processes, media in their languages.
It's about more than just communication, then.
Much more. It's about identity, culture, dignity. The concept of LHR is incredibly significant in challenging what's known as linguistic imperialism.
Linguistic imperialism.
Yeah, it's a pervasive issue where dominant global languages, most notably English today, but historically others too, systematically marginalize, disadvantage, and sometimes even lead to the extinction of local languages and the cultures they carry. LHR provides a framework to fight against that.
So it's about protecting linguistic diversity as a fundamental human right, just like other rights.
Exactly, protecting and promoting it.
What are some concrete strategies our sources mention for promoting LHR, especially maybe in education?
Our sources highlight several key strategies. Probably the most important is mother tongue-based multilingual education. This means children start their schooling in their home language, building a strong foundation before adding other national or international languages.
Why is that so critical?
It's vital not just because kids learn better initially in a language they understand, leading to better academic outcomes overall, but also because it validates their identity, their culture, their family background right from the start. It counters centuries of often colonial or assimilationist policies that told children their home language was inferior.
That makes a huge difference to a child's self-worth.
Immense. Other strategies include developing genuinely inclusive curricula that represent and value diverse languages and cultures, moving away from a purely monolingual or monocultural focus. Also crucial is teacher training, equipping educators with the skills and understanding needed for multilingual pedagogy so they can effectively support learners from diverse linguistic backgrounds.
Teachers need the right tools.
Absolutely. And finally, community involvement, working with communities to support their languages, and policy advocacy, pushing for laws and policies that recognize and protect linguistic rights at the state or national level.
So it takes action on multiple levels.
It does. These strategies together aim to create truly linguistically responsive environments where all languages are respected and all learners feel empowered. And for you, the listener, understanding CLA and CAL and advocating for LHR makes you not just a more discerning language user, but an active force for linguistic equity.
Okay, so bringing this all together, what does it mean for us navigating the world today? Our sources highlight these huge global forces, neoliberalism and globalization, and their impact on language, particularly in education.
Yes, these are major shaping forces. Neoliberalism, as our sources describe it, is essentially the push to apply market-driven values to everything. Think competition, privatization, measuring everything by its employability value. This strongly affects higher education.
How so?
It often leads to prioritizing job-oriented courses and skills over broader critical thinking or humanities subjects. Education becomes less about intellectual exploration and more about producing workers for the global economy. Students might be seen more as consumers buying a service that leads to a job.
Right. And how does globalization connect with language in this context?
Globalization intensifies these trends. Together, neoliberalism and globalization heavily promote dominant international languages, especially English, viewing them primarily as tools for economic competitiveness, essential for success in the global marketplace.
So language learning becomes less about cultural understanding and more about economic advantage.
That's often the pressure, yes. And the big concern here, highlighted in our sources, is that this can lead to linguistic homogenization, a narrowing down of linguistic diversity where local languages and the unique cultural perspectives they embody get marginalized, devalued, or even disappear because they lack perceived economic utility.
So it's not just about which language you learn, but why you're learning it, how it's taught, and which languages end up being seen as valuable or worthless in this global economic game. That feels like a really significant shift.
It is a significant shift with profound implications. There's this tension. Global connection is valuable, obviously, but if the price is erasing the world's incredible linguistic and cultural diversity, that's a huge loss.
So how can education push back against this? Are there pedagogical responses?
Yes, definitely. Our sources discuss several approaches designed to resist these homogenizing market pressures. One key approach is critical pedagogy. This involves actively engaging students in questioning social norms, power structures, the purpose of education itself, and the knowledge they're encountering. It's about teaching how to think critically, not just what to think for a job.
Fostering that independent reasoning.
Exactly. Another is interdisciplinary learning, breaking down the artificial walls between subjects to show how language connects deeply with history, sociology, politics, economics. It provides a richer, more contextualized understanding.
Seeing the whole picture again.
Right. And things like collaborative research projects on social issues and creating dialogic classroom spaces where open discussion, debate, ethical reflection, and diverse perspectives are genuinely encouraged are also crucial. They help students grapple with these complex social and linguistic issues together.
That makes perfect sense. Now, our sources also mention something quite striking, that many students today seem to lack the habit of questioning and independent reasoning. In a world saturated with information and misinformation, how can we, as learners, as citizens, actively cultivate these vital critical thinking skills, especially when it comes to language and the messages we receive?
That is such an important question for all of us, isn't it? Developing critical thinking isn't passive. It's an active, ongoing practice. Our sources suggest several concrete, actionable strategies anyone can use.
Okay, like what?
First, Socratic questioning. Don't just accept information passively. Actively ask why and how. What are the underlying assumptions here? What evidence supports this claim? What are the potential biases? What might be the consequences or implications? This forces you to dig beneath the surface.
Challenge everything, basically.
In a constructive way, yes. Second, engage in debates and discussions. And the goal isn't necessarily to win, but to really listen to and analyze different viewpoints, identify strengths and weaknesses in arguments, including your own, and understand the complexity of issues. It sharpens your reasoning.
And helps you articulate your own thoughts better.
Absolutely. Third, practice critical reading and viewing. When you encounter any text, an article, a blog post, a social media feed, a news report, don't just absorb it. Examine it actively. Look for bias, logical fallacies, unsupported claims, persuasive language, emotional manipulation. Ask, how is language being used here to shape my perception?
Be an active decoder.
Precisely. Fourth, try keeping a reflective journal. Briefly jotting down your thoughts, questions, reactions, and even emotional responses to things you learn or experience helps you become more aware of your own thinking processes, biases, and how you interpret information. It's metacognition, thinking about your thinking.
Interesting. Self-analysis.
Yes. And finally, collaborative projects. Working with others to analyze social issues, case studies, or complex texts allows you to pool insights, challenge each other's assumptions constructively, and build more nuanced, well-rounded understandings together.
These are incredibly practical steps, things anyone can start doing right away to become a more analytical, reflective learner. It really enables you to question assumptions, see things from multiple angles, and just engage more deeply and thoughtfully.
Exactly. And these skills aren't just for academic success. They're crucial for navigating the complexities of modern life, for understanding the power of language, and for becoming a more engaged, insightful, and perhaps resilient citizen in the face of all these global influences and competing messages.
Wow, what an absolutely incredible deep dive today. We've covered so much ground, really digging into the profound and often hidden power of language. We kick things off by moving beyond just thinking about words, right? Breaking down language into discourse, text, and talk, and understanding how cohesion and coherence work together to give language that crucial texture that actually makes it meaningful.
And then we jumped headfirst into critical discourse analysis, CDA, peeling back the layers to see how language isn't some neutral tool, but is deeply intertwined with power, ideology, and social inequality.
Yeah, exploring Fairclough's model gave us a real framework for that, and seeing how language can be used for direct domination or that really subtle hegemony or even deliberate manipulation.
That was key.
Hmm.
But then, crucially, we didn't just stay in analysis mode. We armed ourselves with concepts like critical language awareness, CLA, and critical applied linguistics, CAL.
Right, seeing those as tools for empowerment, giving us that superpower to decode linguistic messages more effectively. And we touched on the fundamental importance of linguistic human rights, too.
Showing how we can empower ourselves and others through valuing and protecting linguistic diversity. It connects the personal to the political.
Definitely. And we linked all this to the big picture, those societal forces like neoliberalism and globalization, understanding their impact on language education and what languages get valued.
And maybe most importantly, we wrapped up with those really practical, actionable strategies for fostering critical thinking skills in all our interactions, encouraging you, our listener, to become more analytical, more reflective, more engaged.
So, for you listening right now, the challenge is this. The next time you read a headline, or listen to a political speech, or even just have a casual conversation, pause for a second. Ask yourself, okay, what unseen forces might be shaping this? What power dynamics are at play? What does this language really want me to believe, or how is it trying to frame my understanding, maybe without me even noticing?
And maybe take it one step further.
Yeah.
Ask, how can my own use of language, the choices I make, the way I frame things, the awareness I bring to conversations, how can that contribute, even in a small way, to greater understanding, to more equity, maybe even to positive social change in my own sphere of influence?
A powerful thought to end on. That's it for this Duck Dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this essential journey into the incredible world-shaping power of language.